Yo, what's good, guys? It's your host Sage D Samurai here, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm here to bring you guys another part 2. What if Asta was Fujitora's reincarnation, part 7. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this what if. Guys, this is gonna be like a little bit of an announcement early on. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. These past following days have been pretty nice, pretty nice. I hope you guys are in good spirits as well. Uh, yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know on that one. Another thing, guys, is that I'm kind of thinking of an idea for the channel. I know I said this like often in my last video, but pretty much I was thinking about a way to like make the what if shorter, because I'm beginning to realize something. Although a series starts off very good, the longer it goes on, it begins to like lose its momentum. And also even I myself begin to get exhausted with it because I'm just trying to get straight to the point. But I kind of extend this how the story can go on. And the thing was, I didn't really like that, so I'm trying to make it to where my what if series only lasts until like at least 4 parts. Or better yet, I can just straight up just make what if movies and post them every day. That's what I'm aiming for, guys. I'm trying to make what if movies and like at least 4 part series of what ifs every single day. But the thing is, guys, I'm still kind of learning how to do it yet. But don't worry, I will eventually get there at some point. I will eventually get there. But yeah, thank y'all so much for just sitting here and listening on to that. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys' support. And hopefully you guys will continue to support me as we try to go through all these big improvements that I have for the channel later in the future. But I believe that's enough now. You guys are probably tired of hearing all this, so why don't we just begin with this what if? It's part 7, so either way, let's get started.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright guys, let's begin this part of this what if. It's part 7 now, and either way, let's begin. Oh yeah, a little bit of a disclaimer: if you guys hear any background noises or hear me stuttering, I will be trying to edit it as much as I can, but if I can, please ignore and just follow through the story. Trust me, it'll make it way more enjoyable. If you guys understand that, I appreciate it a lot, and yeah, like I said, let's begin. So guys, we now kick out this what if with multiple weeks now passing. We're now entering the Witch's Forest arc. And as we enter it, we will see Asta currently in the woods as he will be training with Libe to master his anti-magic. I'll also be doing 100 rows of anti-magic slashes, each one being stronger than the next, until eventually I'll also be slicing a multiple amount of trees in an instant. And in fact, it didn't look like he even sheathed his sword at all. Still not good enough. What are you talking about? Both Libe and Asta would be talking to each other as Asta begins to do the concepts once again. He felt as if they weren't good enough, while Libe was over here looking at him as if he was crazy. He nearly destroyed the entire forest just from those few slashes, yet he still says they're not good enough. But Asta just ignores Libe and just continues training, with Libe sighing as he also begins to get back into training. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, why exactly do these events end up happening now? After all, last we seen, they were just starting to communicate, now they're training. Well, we can now flash back to the very event itself. During the first interaction with Asta and Libe, both of them were just there staring at each other in the dark void. Libe would choke at Asta, trying to be intimidating, but this is when suddenly he would then begin to feel himself shrink. Wait, what? At this is when suddenly the ginormous image that he made for himself just flat out disappeared as the pressure begins to set in. At this, Libe will be shaked out of it as he falls down to the ground on his knees, and that's when he looks up at Asta, who currently right now was looking way more demonic than him. Now this would cause Libe to actually be, look at him in fear, but also would just suddenly just hit him on the head with the karate chop, causing Libe to wince in pain. Ow, what the heck was that for? Explain, Asta would say. At this, Libe will look at Asta as he begins to, get angry, telling him that he doesn't need to explain anything. But before Asta once again hits him with a few more karate chops, we can now move forward. So later on, Libe begins to explain his origins to Asta, pretty much everything that happened to him, about Lichita and everything. And finally, what he wants to do, that he wants to get revenge. Now Asta would sit there and listen to all of this while nodding his head, as he looks at Libe with a little bit of pity. Now this will cause Libe to actually react violently as he tells Asta not to look at him with those eyes, as there's only one person who ever, but that's when he would then stop, as he realized that Asta looked very similar to Lichita. And that's when Libe was able to make the connection that these two were mother and son. As he would look at Asta in shock, he would ask him if he ever had his mother or ever even knew her, but Asta would shake his head, telling him that he was an orphan. So, it's true, he would say. As Asta would then suddenly look at Libe, he would then suddenly offer him a hand with a smile, telling Libe that while he doesn't really approve of his revenge, he will be there to support him. After all, that's what friends are for. Now, Libe, after hearing this, would of course be surprised as he looks at Asta as if he was crazy. What type of person would want to be friends with him, a demon? But Asta would just continue staring at him with, some warm smiles, which reminded him exactly like Lichita. Those two really are one of the same, he would say, as he could have sworn he saw a silhouette of Lichita behind Asta. But finally he ends up smiling and actually extending his own hand before shaking Asta's hand. Fine, then let's do it, friend, he would say. So with this, after ending it all with a handshake and a smile, Asta would return back to the real world, and as he does, Libe would actually still be able to make communication with Asta, although only through his mind. Now, Libe still wasn't strong enough to make a temporary physical form yet, which is understandable, but Asta had decided that he was going to help him sooner or later. After all, what type of person would not help out their friends? So after this very moment, as we can now move forward into the present once again, Asta and Libe had trained with each other, growing stronger and stronger together. Not only that, but he got to the point where Libe got so strong where he was able to make a physical appearance. However, he was only able to make a very small version, so most of the time you will see him like hopping onto Asta's shoulder, similar to how Pikachu was with Ash. And most of the time, those two would just spend their times training, talking, and discussing about the events that unfolded. And during that time, Asta and Libe would actually become so close to the point where Libe would intentionally begin to look at Asta like a brother. So yes, after all these amazing events had transpired, we can now continue on with the plot itself, as after a while just training in the forest and causing a ginormous amount of destruction, Asta will finally decide it was finally time to return back to the Black Pools. So he'll begin to walk back. And as Asta was heading back to the Black Bull's base, he would eventually end up seeing it. However, something was very different about it, which was very clear. After all, currently right now outside of the Black Bull's base, we would see multiple people screaming, as currently every single one of the Black Bulls was currently into their training right now. And Asta was there watching all of it. I know we were the ones who decided on training, but who would have thought they actually would get serious as well, Asta would say, as he chuckled his head at just the agony of the whole situation. Currently outside will be Magma, Finral, Luck, Noel, and heck, even Gauche and Gray. Oh yeah, and also Gordon too, because he's cool. As each one of them would be currently in the midst of training. And the reason for this one was pretty simple. If we actually now do another flashback, we'll find out that Finral during his time inside the Black Bull's base and what he was discussing with the Black Bulls was pretty simple. They were too weak. Now, of course, hearing this, most of the Black Bulls would get offended at this, especially Magma and, just especially Magma. However, this is when Finral will begin to tell them that how exactly do they stack to people like Asta, or stack to people like Yami. Now, this will cause Magma to actually pause before suddenly, this is when Vanessa will then speak up, telling him that those two are just on a different league themselves, and that there was no point in comparing them to them. But Finral would disagree, as he begins to explain to them how during this entire time, haven't they all felt like a little bit inferior to them? After all, Asta is someone who doesn't even have any magic, yet is able to accomplish so many amazing things. And Captain Yami, he's Yami. I mean, if you guys aren't like out there like either admiring this man or like just be like, dang, that guy's manly, like you gotta respect him. So of course these guys have generous respect for both of them. But at the same time, they felt as if they were being left in the dust. And Finral did not want to feel like that. He didn't want to feel as if he was useless. And after meeting up with Longris, something just snapped in Finral. Like, he didn't know why or what the reason was. But he understood right there and now that he just didn't want to be inferior anymore. He didn't want to be left behind. And now, finally, was a time to change. It was either that one, they change, or two, they end up getting left in the dust by those two. And eventually end up falling back into the background, where Finral always is. And after hearing Finral's declaration, all the Black Bulls actually took a moment to wonder, before suddenly Magma would then begin to walk up as he tells Finral that he's right. As Magma himself has also been feeling a little bit insecure about his strength. After all, Asta was a guy who just recently entered into the Black Bulls and didn't have any magic at all. Yet Asta had accomplished way more impressive feats than Magma than he has been the entire time that he was with the Black Bulls. So after seeing all this and after declaring this, Magma would then look at Finral before walking over to him, and suddenly he ended up slapping Finral on the back. Ouch, what the heck was that for? Simple, because of the fact he had a good idea. At this, Magma would laugh at Finral, with Finral actually being surprised that Magma was on board, and so this is when Luck would then step in as well, as he was actually really excited for the idea of training. After all, this means that they would eventually get to fight each other, and Luck being a battle junkie would also hop in. And as for Noelle, she was actually surprisingly agreeing to the event as well, surprising all of them considering the fact she still had her royal stuck-up attitude. But Noelle would just shrug it off, telling them that she just straight up just wants to get stronger, as she wants to improve herself and actually prove to her family that she wasn't a royal failure. And of course, she doesn't really say the royal failure part, but she does say that she just wants to prove herself to certain people. Now, of course, after hearing this, now all the Black Bulls at this point are now realizing that, yeah, it was finally time for them to go through a change. Although some of them were very reluctant on it, the rest of them who were for sure and guaranteed about it had decided that they were going to start training. But the thing was, they had no clue exactly where to start. After all, they never really took this as seriously as they should have. Until this is when suddenly they ended up deciding to ask the only person who definitely seems to have his mind in the right direction, Asta. As we now move forward and move back to the present. So after the events that had transpired with the Black Bulls realizing that they are currently not strong enough to keep up with people like Yami or Asta, and although they know for sure that even now they can't keep up with them, at least now they'll be able to support them and help them when the situation is required. So with all of this, as we move forward, the Black Bulls would ask Asta for help, and of course Asta would agree to this as they are his friends and he does want to help them. So with that, moving forward through the multiple weeks that have passed, Asta helped out the Black Bulls as they took their training seriously, and each one of them got an exponential growth. For example, Luck has gotten the armor that he usually got at the Elf Reincarnation arc. Magma also ends up getting his upgrades, that being Trap Fire and Magic. Although there will be one thing that ends up changing with all the Black Bulls, and that's the fact that Asta had actually decided to teach them the different martial arts that he learned from his world. That's right, I'm adding a little bit of a twist. So that means they're going to end up learning the Rokushiki. So for those who don't know exactly what the Rokushiki is, the Rokushiki is a special superhuman martial arts style which pretty much enables people to do very impressive feats. For example, like walking on air, or to straight out just move at an extremely fast pace, or even to the point of where hardening their body. So bottom line is, Rokushiki is very, very powerful, and I believe it would be a very good hand for the Black Bulls. So during the time of training, they'll begin to learn the Rokushiki techniques thanks to Asta himself, as he knew about them in his past life and had learned them. However, as they were all learning about these techniques, eventually the other Black Bulls also begin to fall in line. The first one to fall in line will be Gordon instantly, as he had not even heard of it until he returned back from a mission and eventually heard about it and instantly wanted to hop in. So he also agreed to training. So Asta, of course, put Gordon through the training as well. And eventually he would also bring Gray as well as Goshen to it as well, before also eventually adding Vanessa. As Vanessa herself, although she didn't want to admit it, she also saw the way that they were improving themselves and saw that they were beginning to go on more missions together. And I don't mean each one of them are teaming up separately and just going on missions. I mean all of them are going on missions together and they look incredibly fun. And each time they would go on missions, Vanessa felt like she was being left behind by her own group. And not wanting to be left behind, she decided that she actually wanted to join in on the training. To which Asta, of course, accepted her with opening hands. So with this is when we now turn to the present itself fully, and this is exactly the results. During the entire time, the Black Bulls had trained tremendously hard, taking on missions after missions. They would go on missions together, and Yami, who was there most of the time, would actually see his group actually beginning to grow and get stronger, and this also made him to realize that he needs to get stronger as well. After all, what type of leader he is to be weaker than his own subordinates? And after all, he needs to be the one to show the example. So during that time, secretly, Yami was also training, increasing his power. And although most of the Black Bulls don't know about it, Asta had known about it. As each time Yami would return back, even though it was subtle, Asta could see that his power was slowly but gradually growing stronger. So as Asta would return back, the Black Bulls would of course see him and wave at him, as this is when suddenly Luck would then rush over at Asta with a lightning kick. "Hey Asta, fight me," Luck would say. However, Asta would just dodge out of the way of Luck's attack, and before Luck can even respond, he would then be backhanded in the face by Asta, causing him to be sent flying and crashing into a tree. Now this will cause the Black Bulls to chuckle at Luck's display, while Luck gets up as he begins to prepare for combat, but Asta just tells him later, as right now him and Yami had to go to, the Clover Kingdom, as they had to give another report about the Black Bulls and their recent mission. Now, as for the reason why Asta was coming along, it was pretty simple. Julius wanted Asta over, considering the fact that Asta's abilities were still so mysterious to Julius, and he wants to learn as much about them as he can. So eventually, as we now move forward with a time skip, Asta and Yami would eventually arrive to Julius, to where Julius ends up calling them in, and once again he begins to interrogate Asta about any of his impressive abilities, trying to ask him if he learned anything, to which Asta just shakes his head and tells him that he's in the midst of practicing with his anti-magic. Now, Julius was actually very interested about this as he asked Asta what else can he do with it. We were finally hints of turning to Libe, who currently right now was on Asta's shoulder. Come on, Libe, can you tell me anything what you can do? Oh, what more abilities have you learned? As he tries to question Libe, Libe would eventually end up getting tired of him, so he decides to just return back to the grimoire, not wanting to deal with Julius any longer. At this, Asta would choke out the display before Julius ends up finally getting serious after a while. He ends up finally telling them that they had located another magic stone, and due to this, he decided to ask the Black Bulls themselves to retrieve it, as the next magic stone's location would be at the Witch's Forest, held by the Queen of Witches herself. Now, of course, after hearing this, Yami would of course agree to the mission, with Asta agreeing as well, with Julius telling them that he knows that they won't fail. So with that, Asta and Yami would then return back to the Black Bulls and inform them about the events that had transpired. Now, Black Bulls are actually really excited for this one, except for, well, Vanessa. She was currently right now not in the mood. She did not want to be a part of this mission. As she tells them that she wasn't very feeling well and was about to return back to her room, this is when Yami would then ask her to take him, or take them at least, over there. Now, this would cause everyone to pause and wonder why Yami was asking her, and so Yami would then straight up just reveal that she's from the Witch's Forest. Now, this will cause everyone to gasp in shock as they couldn't believe Vanessa was actually from the Witch's Forest, although Asta had speculated it, until this is when finally, after a while of, just talking to Vanessa, she will finally decide to lead them to the Witch's Forest, although she doesn't feel comfortable going there. Oh yeah, and the squad was formed, as the main team that was going over there would actually be just the entire Black Bull squad itself. After working together for so long, they actually became some type of unit, as they all decided to just go there together. So that means this time the entire Black Bull squad is going. Well, except for Yami, as he also had different things to do, as he was sent on a different mission from Julia, so of course he had to attend to that. So with that, we can now move forward to when the Black Bulls eventually arrive to the Witch's Forest. So soon after traveling for a while, they would eventually arrive at the Witch's Forest, and they do get into a little bit of a scuffle, mostly due to the fact that the witches do not like the men in the Black Bulls. But after a while, just talking with them, and after going through a little bit of shenanigans, they'll eventually be allowed to enter into the Witch's Forest, and soon meet the Queen of Witches herself. Now, the Queen of Witches would stare down at the Black Bulls, and instantly, she would dislike all of them. As Vanessa would begin to ask her for the Magic Stone, as she was sent here by the Wizard King. But this is when the Queen of Witches would just be automatically rude to them, as she tells her straight up who gives her the right to be here after she so-called abandoned them. As she begins to be rude to all the Black Bulls, with Noelle trying to step up for her friend, but Vanessa was just there looking down, with the rest of the Black Bulls feeling uncomfortable about the situation, the Queen would eventually end up meeting the eyes of Asta. And as she does, she'll feel a chill going out her spine. Now, she was confident that she could take on every single one of them here. After all, she was the Queen of Witches. So that means she's definitely got to be the strongest one here. But when it came to Asta, she honestly felt fear, as she doesn't even know exactly who or what this guy was. But there was just an unimaginable pressure and power that was hidden beneath him that she herself can feel it. And she didn't even know if there was a limit behind it or not. And honestly, it was something that she herself did not want to actually encounter. So although she was rude to most of the Black Bulls, she would be subtly less to Asta, mostly due to the fact that she was cautious of his strength. So with all this moving forward, the Queen of Witches will be there declining them her magic stone, while the Black Bulls would try to negotiate with her or talk to her. And of course, things were not working out, as she just did not want nothing to do with them, and after a while she was getting tired of them, and then was about to threaten them to leave, but this is when suddenly an attack would then be released, as the Witch's Forest would then be breached by the Eye of the Midnight Sun. As they had arrived, and along with them would be Fana. As she had arrived at the area, she currently right now was looking for the magic stones, as reported by Licht, who currently right now realized that even though they were quite injured, they still had a job to do, and if they don't do it soon, then it will be far too late for them to even complete it, and he was not going to give up on his revenge. So as Fana would actually arrive at the location, she begins to fly on the salamander, and as she does, she begins to release salamander's breath on the entire forest, actually beginning to burn it. However, right before she can do any more lasting damage, or at least as her goons were about to attack a few more of the witches, this is when the Black Bulls would then leap into action. Ghost would instantly begin to attack them, as she begins to imagine that each and every single one of them were trying to injure his sister Marie. Now, Asta realized that although Ghost's habit was very, and I mean seriously, unhealthy, there was a way to utilize it, at least for now, since he couldn't exactly just take Ghost to a therapist because of the fact that, well, it's Ghost, and also because of the fact that that guy is very, very stubborn. He decided that for now he could at least do this to the point where he tells Ghost to look at everyone that's being attacked and seeing them as a bunch of guys attacking his sister. And just the thought of that snapped Ghosh as he ends up looking at everyone in the witch's forest and just imagines them as Marie. And currently right now, the Midnight Stone was attacking his sister. So, of course, using this, he'll be fueled by anger as he attacks on every single one of them and actually begins to kill some of them while the rest of the Black Bulls also leap into action, with each one of them beginning to counter the Midnight Sun. Now, the Queen of Witches herself will be surprised at this as each one of them begins to show their exponential powers as well as their growth, as this is when, of course, Noelle will also step up as she turns into her Valkyrie armor, which, to just let you know, she also unlocked it during the training with Asta, so she's actually way stronger than the canon itself at this oh my god, sorry guys. Talking consistently as well as like moving at this pace is like very, very difficult. Now, sure, I can slow down, but then the what if would get pretty boring, so I try talking at a reasonably fast pace, but yikes, it's very restraining on the throat. So sorry, give me a few seconds. Alright, so moving on. So yes, as I said, Noelle had unlocked her Valkyrie armor at this point and is way stronger than her canon self. So as she unlocks her Valkyrie armor, this is when she then turns to the Queen of Witches and points her drill towards her. Fine, how about this? If we're able to defeat all these guys and prevent them from causing any more damage, you'll give us the magic stone. Now, as she points her drill at the Queen of Witches, the Queen will look at Noelle with disgust, but she hides it as she tells her fine, as she supposedly agrees to it. Now, of course, seeing this, Noelle would nod and actually send a smile at Vanessa as she nods her head towards her before dashing off towards the Midnight Sun and begins to fight them. Now, as she ends up leaving, though, the Queen of Witches will end up looking at Asta, and Asta, instead of just sending her a relaxed smile, he was instead sending her a frown. Does he know? The Queen of Witches will wonder if Asta found out that she was lying to Noelle, but Asta would just turn his back towards her as he then looks at Fana, who currently right now was like looking at all this, and she was actually being pissed off. It looks like she hasn't sensed me yet. Well, I might as well make my presence known. As Asta would then suddenly jump out of the hut, he will finally end up arriving down to the ground as he ends up releasing this pressure. And as soon as the pressure was felt, Fana felt fear. At this, the emotionless expression that she showed instantly shattered as she begins to shake. While the rest of the men who currently right now were not being attacked by the Black Bulls, but was instead running from them, would actually be surprised as they also felt this pressure and they felt as if they were being crushed by their own weight. It felt as if multiple boulders were stacking upon them and it is just continuing stacking and stacking until eventually they begin to feel themselves not being able to stand any longer as they collapse to the ground. All the while Fana was watching all this, she'll be looking at Asta and she sees him casually there staring at her. How? Why is he here? He shouldn't be here, she would say, as she begins to actually surprisingly on just pure instinct alone begin to retreat. This is when she then stops herself. She realizes that she still had a mission to be done. For licked, she would say. As she then turns to Asta, she would then release a generous stream of flames from Salamander as he tries to attack Asta. Releasing a stream of flames, however, Asta would just cut right through it with ease, as Fana will be impressed by just how powerful Asta is, but at the same time, she'll be showing fear. She realized that Asta was so powerful to the point where he's able to cut through an attack of a spirit. He's only grown more powerful. They don't stand a chance. At least not like this. As Fana was trying to debate what they should do at this very instant, this is when suddenly an unexpected arrival would appear as the Diamond Kingdom would arrive, and as soon as they do, they'll see the chaos that was happening. Now, of course, Mars would be one of them along with Ladros, as he would be there watching everything in shock until finally he ends up seeing Fana herself as she was currently right now looking at the Diamond Kingdom before making eye contact with Mars. Fana? He would say as he looks at her in shock. But this is when Fana would look at him in confusion, however, she felt as if she recognized him. I don't know who that is, she would say, or at least that's what she was trying to say. However, the more she looked at Mars, she can't help but begin to replay multiple different memories, as if she knew him. However, unfortunately, since she was too busy focusing on Mars, she didn't actually sense Asta approaching. And by the time she sensed it, it was already too late. She would turn around, and at that very instant, Asta would then appear, as this one suddenly he already had a generous amount of anti-magic on his blade. Time's up. At this, Fana would try to deflect the attack, but unfortunately it was too late for her, as even with Salamander, she was not fast enough to deflect Asta's attack. So with the simple anti-magic slash, Fana would be struck down as she would begin to fall through the sky. And now, of course, seeing this, Mars would panic as he rushes at Fana, screaming no as he rushes towards her and ends up catching her at this very instant. He would hold Fana in fear as he begins to shake her, hoping that she was alive, while also just there looking at Fana. And the reason why was pretty simple. Asta was trying to debate whether or not his technique had worked. Now, during the time of the training, Asta had developed a new technique. A technique to lock down people's magic just by using a simple slash. The mark would stay there for a very long period of time, but it can lock up people's magic ranging from about, up to like 3 minutes to all the way to up to 15 minutes itself. Now, Asta's technique, the technique was very powerful and it was a way to easily take down magic users. But the thing was, though, that he needed a lot of concentration for it. And also, he also had to be very precise with the slash itself. Luckily, thanks to the fact that Fana was so caught off guard by Mars' presence, so luckily Asta was able to get a clean hit in. As he would look down at Fana, as she opens her eyes, Fana would finally look at Mars, and instead of the girl who showed little emotion at all, she would be replaced by the actual Fana herself, as she would be staring at Mars before hugging him, as this is when they would then have their reunion. Now, Asta would of course see this, and he would actually feel happy for Mars, although he was confused about the whole situation, but it seemed as if they had known each other, or must have been separated, as they were now hugging each other, and now being happy to be at the other one's presence. So as Asta will begin to jump from the ground, the rest of the Black Bulls begin to take care of the rest of the enemies. As each and every single one of the enemies get taken care of, the Black Bulls will eventually return back to, where Asta is, as they end up seeing the reunion, and are actually really happy for them. Or at least they were, as this is when the reunion would then be cut short, as a magical blast would then be shot out and hit Mars in the back, or at least that's what it was supposed to. As this is when suddenly Asta would then appear, and he would then cut the attack in half, causing it to not hit Mars at all, while the man himself would also be surprised. "Lodgeros?" he would say, as he couldn't believe it. The guy he thought was an ally was over here attacking him, while Fana, who saw Mars being, just about to be attacked, was literally about to activate Salamander and just activate her power once again. Luckily, Asta had stopped it. And also, thanks to the fact of Asta's, anti-magic slash, which was still there, luckily, her magic wasn't exactly going to be activating like that anytime soon. And as for Asta, the man himself was currently staring down at Lodgeros. Now, let me ask a question. Why exactly do you attack your own teammate? He would ask, as he would stare down at Lodgeros. Now, Lodgeros, of course, felt the presence of Asta. He felt the pressure, and he had to admit he was unnerved by it, but there was no way he was going to be afraid, especially by some anti-magicless brat. As he begins to explain how pretty much he had been trained to be a killing machine, and he's doing exactly what he's been trained to do, and he plans to kill everyone here. And just as he says that, he begins to laugh maniacally, while Mars is just there looking at him before he ends up getting up, as he tries to talk to Lodgeros, telling them that they don't need to continue on that way, and that things could change. He learned this from Asta, especially as Asta has shown him the difference between strength, and he's shown him how strong he had become. Pretty much after Asta kicked Mars' ass, Mars had some type of realization. So due to that, he doesn't honestly feel the need to start killing everyone. He's no longer a killing machine anymore. He's human. However, Lodgeros hearing this would scoff, telling Mars that he was soft and that his opinion honestly didn't matter, as he would shoot another beam at Mars. As Mars prepares to counter the attack, however, Asta wouldn't stop it, as Mars would be a shot that Asta would help him. Asta would just smiled at him. You've been through a lot. Besides, I believe it's better that you start taking care of her now, he would say as he points at Fana. The girl herself was just looking at Mars with a worried expression, causing Mars to blush, but he ends up rushing over to her, making sure that she's safe, while Asta decides that he was going to take care of Lodgeros himself. "You are going to face me? An magicless brat? You don't stand a chance. I recommend you surrender." However, this is when, before he can continue on any further, Asta would appear right in front of him and land a powerful gut punch to his stomach. Now, Lodgeros would of course cough up blood just from the hit itself, as he'll be blown back. This guy really thought he can take on Asta? So stupid. Noah would say as she shakes her head, feeling almost pity for Lodgeros. However, not really, as she was honestly really excited to see how Asta does. It's honestly a treat for the Black Bulls as they see Asta, a guy who's completely magicless, fight off against opponents that are supposed to be way stronger than him. But he has shown them that even without magic, he still can kick almost anyone's ass. No, he can kick anyone's ass, if he sets his mind to it at least. So as Lodgeros would be blown back, he would honestly be in shock by just how much that hit hurt. He had no idea what was going on until he looked at Asta once again. "Curse you, you bastard!" At this, he tries using his magic once again to create multiple light beams and shoot them at Asta. And Asta would see this. However, Asta would then begin to deflect them one by one. As this is when suddenly Lodgeros would then shoot out multiple of them even more. This time he multiplied them even further. and this time Asta was getting attacked from all angles. "Try dodging that, you brat," he would shout, as just as the light beam seemed to almost hit Asta, this was as if time would then freeze for Asta. Asta would begin to dodge out of the way of these dangerous attacks with ease and with grace, while everyone else would just watch in amazement. As Asta was dodging out of the way of all this, the rest of them couldn't do nothing more but watch in shock. As eventually, after dodging the way out of the final attack, Asta would then stare down at Ladros, who currently right now was in disbelief. He dodged the way out of all those attacks. All those attacks fueled by my own powerful magic. He's not human, he would shout. As Asta would stare down at Ladros, this is when suddenly Ladros would begin to fail to notice something. Number one was the fact that Asta's sword had swung down. And now number two was the fact that an anti-magic slash was already way too close for him to dodge. As just as Ladros prepares to attack again, he would then be cut from the center as he feels pain, as he will be sent flying and blown back before suddenly he ends up hitting one of the houses of the witch's forest before collapsing down to the ground. The anti-magic slash had hit him perfectly, as Asta would then put the sword back into its sheath. Wow, this guy sucked. This will be, of course, Libe, who currently right now was actually out of the grimoire and on Asta's shoulders, as he'll be looking with disgust at Ladros, upset that he didn't even get to test himself fully. "I know, but don't worry, we'll find strong opponents soon," Asta would say as he ends up shaking his head before walking towards Ladros. Of course, Mars, who had seen this, would be in shock, as well as Fana, who couldn't believe just how strong the man was. And also, just to let you know, her anti-magic slash mark had just left now, so she's able to use magic, but now she has fully gained control, so everything's good. So as Asta was walking towards Ladros, they'll have a little bit of a talk, with Ladros telling Asta to just kill him already, but Asta would just shake his head, telling him that he won't, and telling Ladros that he needs to grow up and actually see that life isn't all that anymore. And at the end of the day, he needs to value his life as well as the life of others. And of course, after hearing this, Ladros would be impressed by this, as he would actually begin to look in a different light, while Asta just sends him a smirk before walking off. Now that seeing that things were taken care of here, Mars would walk over to Asta as he thanks him for earlier, as well as he apologizes for the trouble that he had caused, and the multiple other interactions that they had. However, instead of getting angry, Asta would actually instead just shake his head and tell Mars that he doesn't need to feel sad about anything or apologize for anything. Telling him that he's seen Mars grown as a person and can honestly see that he became a better person due to that growth. And from now on, Mars actually agrees with Asta as he tells him that from now on, he'll be changing his ways and that he's now betraying the Diamond Kingdom. Now, of course, hearing this, Asta would just nod his head, tells Mars to do whatever the heck he wants. After all, he's not in charge of him, but just tells Mars to live the life that he wants. And Mars, hearing this, would nod his head, as this is when he then extend his hand to Asta. And Asta, seeing this, would of course extend his hand as well, as both of them would then shake on it as a sign of respect. And after this beautiful and wholesome moment had passed, Mars would return back to Fana, with both of them catching up on each other as they now decide that they're going to live their new lives, while Asta would just stare at the two of them with a smile on his face. As for the rest of the Black Bulls, they end up rushing towards Asta as they begin to explain about everything they did during the fight against the Midnight Sun. As they begin to tell Asta about all the amazing things they accomplished and everything, this is when the Queen of Witches will make her appearance. "Now, we have done everything you wanted, so give us the magic stone," Noelle would say. She had seen and sensed the Witch Queen approaching, so she of course decided to ask for the demand. But the Witch's Queen, instead of abiding by it, would then suddenly begin to activate her magic. As this is when she then made multiple blood crosses, with the Black Bulls getting strapped to each and every single one of them, and Asta being included into that. "You people have dared to enter into my forest and act as if you have the right to demand anything from me," she would shout at them. As Asta, who was there sensing all this, began to realize something, that she wasn't planning to do anything at all. As this is when she then looks at Vanessa. At this, Vanessa will be looking at all this with shock as she begins to try to talk to her mother, but instead her mother was just screaming at her and being angry with her. All the while she ends up looking down and honestly is fearful to even talk back. As after a while of thinking about it, Vanessa will then turn to Asta as she wonders why the heck he's not doing anything, as she definitely knows that Asta is strong enough to handle her mother at least. In fact, she had no doubt in her mind that Asta might be the strongest members in the Black Bulls, maybe even surpassing Captain Yami. However, instead of actually going through the action and actually protecting them, Asta was instead staring at Vanessa with a look of wisdom and patience. "What do you want me to do?" I'm helpless in this situation, she would say, as she begins to realize that in the end of the day, she can't even do anything. She knows she's not strong enough to be her mother. So with that, she ends up looking down as her mother finally decides to wrap it up, as she ends up making multiple blood spears as they prepare to pierce the rest of the Black Bulls. However, instead of actually showing fear, all of them would then look at it with a serious expression. As this was suddenly every single one of the Black Bulls began to call out, encouragement to Vanessa, telling her that they all believe that she will save them, and at the end of the day, that everyone had believed in her and her power. Vanessa, hearing this, would actually be moved by the support of her comrades, as this would cause the pages of her book to flip. The grimoire was now activating as a new spell was created. As the blood spirits would rush to pierce through all the Black Bulls, with each and every single one of them staring at it with no at all expression of flinching or fear or really anything at all, this is when the spears would then suddenly miss their target by an inch. What? The Queen of Witches would say, as she couldn't believe it. The attack was supposed to be perfect, she would say, as this is when she then creates multiple different spears, and she causes each and every single one of them to attack the Black Bulls, but once again, none of them pierce them. As this is when suddenly a red cat would then appear as it begins to walk towards, actually just sit in front of the Queen of Witches herself. She'll stare at it in shock, as now Vanessa had finally unlocked and awakened her true power, the ability to manipulate fate itself. As the Queen of Witches herself would be in shock of everything, it will cause her magic to actually be disrupted and causing it to disperse a lot, setting the Black Bulls free, as each one of them would then smile at Vanessa as they all rush towards her and giving her congratulations. Now Vanessa will be there. She actually had tears in her eyes as she will be thanking every single one of them for supporting her and actually believing in her, while the Queen of Witches was just there watching all of this in shock. As she wonders exactly what was going on, this is when suddenly Asta begins to approach her as she stares down at the man. Of course, she was actually afraid of Asta, as she understands that Asta at any moment could have broken out of there and attacked her. But instead of actually harming her or saying anything mean, Asta would just send her a smirk, telling the Queen of Witches herself that from now on, Vanessa will be a part of their family now, and that from now on, she is no longer required. Now, of course, the Queen of Witches would be in shock at just the declaration, while Vanessa, who heard it, would be very happy at the fact that she finally felt as if she was part of a family. As with that, Asta wouldn't smirk as he walks off, and just like that, the Black Bulls had fully accomplished their mission. Or at least, they have, as we now move forward. So sooner after everyone got adjusted, and after Vanessa had shed her tears, they eventually got the magic stone from the Queen of Witches herself. Now, she would actually look at Nero as she does this, as she could already tell that, Nero was actually human, or at least, she was semi-human, I guess. And she already understood who she was, but also she decides to inform the Black Bulls about who exactly the elves were. However, something was very wrong with the explanation, or at least to Asta, as the way she was explaining it, it seems as if the elves themselves were trying to take over the world. However, Asta just couldn't see it that way. Something just didn't make sense. Although sure, they have a proper motive and everything, a few things just don't make sense to him. After all, if the elves were so dead set on taking over the world and everything, and the fact that they had much stronger mana than humans back then, they should have been able to. It just didn't make sense to him. Something was not connecting. As he was trying to wonder exactly why or what the reasons were, the Black Bulls will call Asta over as they tell him that it was finally time for them to head back, to which Asta would do so. As after completing this long and powerful mission, we now move forward with a time skip. So after a while of just traveling, they would eventually arrive at the Black Bulls base, and as they do, they end up deciding to celebrate for, Vanessa's new power-up, as well as the fact they just accomplished a mission. Now, of course, as the Black Bulls were celebrating and partying, Asta had decided to give the report to the Wizard King himself, since Yami was currently away. So we now move forward to when Asta does so. He explains to Julius everything. He gives him the magic stone, to which Julius, after getting the entire explanation from Asta, will now begin to connect all the details. However, just like Asta, he does believe that something was wrong. Just doesn't make any sense. However, for now, I have to admit, although there's many things that we don't know, it's still good enough that we got this information, and I thank the Black Bulls for it. However, I believe it's better that you guys hold on to the stone for now, Julius will say as he tosses the stones over to Asta, to which Asta ends up capturing it, ends up looking at Julius with a confused expression. Julius ends up telling Asta about his idea, as pretty much, instead of, them collecting the magic stones and just giving it to the Wizard King and everything, instead, he actually decided that from now on, every single one of them will now hold on to a magic stone. Every Magic Knight squad will have a magic stone that they must guard and protect. It's up to them to hold it and protect it. So pretty much now that magic stone is a Black Bull's responsibility. And since they found it, it's theirs. Now Asta hearing this would of course be surprised, as he ends up of course agreeing to this task and of course to this mission itself, while Julius ends up thanking him and telling him that he can head off now, with Asta nodding his head. So as Asta would then leave his office, Julius would then lay down, as he was honestly feeling very excited for the future as the next upcoming events were coming near. Now, let's look at all the information that's now clear. Well then, I guess it's time for our next phase, he will say as he gets up, as it was finally time for the Royal Magic Knights. Who exactly do you think Asta's going to face off in the Royal Magic Knights exam? How do you think Asta's interaction with Mary Leona is going to go? And overall, what do you guys think of this story? It's your host, Seiji Samurai, and he's ending his part. Oh boy, guys. Wow, that was just that was just crazy. So guys, I want to, first things first, hold on, I'm getting comfortable in my chair. So guys, first things first, I want to say that this video was pretty fun to make. If you guys don't know, I kind of stopped like midway through the video. I had to take a break, and the reason for that one was pretty simple. I like doing these what ifs, but the thing is, when I do them, I have a little problem when I talk way too fast. I try getting better, like I'm getting better at controlling it now, but like even now, like I'm talking extremely fast to the point where even I'm not registering what words I'm really saying. So it gets pretty confusing at times. I'm trying to learn how to control the pace of it. And also because of the fact that since I'm trying to like change how I do the what if stories, like making them, instead of making like 10 to 12 parts, I'm trying to make it into like only 4 parts of an entire series, which is going to be difficult, but I'm going to have to find a way around it. So yeah, guys, a lot of things are, I plan a lot of things for this channel. I'm planning a lot of things moving forward, and hopefully I'm going to be able to accomplish it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm hoping for it. I'm working for it, you know? And hopefully you guys will be there to, you know, stand beside me and support me as I continue on with this channel. And either way, I really hope you guys do enjoy this video. Go enjoy yourselves. Have a lovely day. And yeah, that's so far the only messages I really got for this one. So hopefully you guys have a lovely day. It's your host, Seiji Samurai, and he's signing off. Peace and stay cool.